All right. So what the episode of WCW Nitro season 2 episode 20 started off with what was it? It was Ric Flair's tag match. Uh I'm not
Yeah, it was Sting. Sting. No, it was Sting and Scott Steiner.
That's how it ended.
Oh, that was later. No, you're right. It was American Males
Yeah, the American
against.
males.
Uh, but let me preface this before we go any further, right?
Yeah.
Um, since this is our first episode doing this, right? I want people who are watching this to understand wrestling is subjective. Okay, just because I don't like it doesn't mean I'm saying it's shit. Doesn't mean I'm saying it shouldn't be done. It doesn't mean anything other than my preference, your preference, right? So if anybody gets offended or anybody doesn't like it, I really don't care. Okay, I really don't. So what you may like, that's awesome. That's on you. That's what tickles your fancy. I may not like it. Doesn't mean it's wrong. Okay, just means hey, I wasn't into it.
See, I
All right.
disagree. My take is concrete. So whatever I say, that's the truth.
Yeah, that's
And
understandable.
I agree with you. I don't care what people say, but whatever I say, that's just what I believe in. They can go pound sand, but
That's
but
But hey, listen, getting back to Nitro real quick, since
yeah.
that's what we're going to talk about, right? Is the Memorial Day Nitro, what you just
Yes.
said, 27th,
Their first
96.
hour and 40-minute episode.
Well, it was 2 hours on TV.
2
Take out the
hours, yeah.
commercial, it's an hour 40. But the opening of Nitro, I got to tell you, I love the opening of Nitro. Always thought it was really good. Gave me some Back to the Future vibes with the little, you know,
The
flames.
pyrotechnics. Yeah.
Yeah, and all that stuff, So I thought it was pretty cool. That was one thing they did right.
Yeah, I
They did a lot of stuff right, but that was one thing I thought was really cool.
I could be wrong, but it looks like some of those was filmed in the Universal backlot. Because I look at some of those buildings and I'm like, I those look so familiar to me.
Wouldn't surprise me because
Yeah.
before they took Nitro on the road, because basically the first Nitro was in the Mall of America, and that was the first time they kind of branched out into really traveling for TV because they used to film everything in the backlot Universal.
Oh,
And
okay.
so if you go back and look at pre-Nitro stuff, WCW, the crowd is basically a lot of tourists,
Oh,
and
interesting.
that kind of strange vibe, kind of they're into it, but they're not really understanding the history of the storylines. You would obviously get some locals who were in there and part of the tradition and when watching the program for the last couple of weeks or months or whatever it may be. But a lot of the people in there were tourists at Universal. Anyway,
Interesting.
on to the show.
That's interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because that whole intro, I'm just watching. I was like, man, that I see that little theater in the background that could be on the Universal backlot, and then some of the buildings. It just looks straight like as if I was on that studio tour. But
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, the episode started off with Ric Flair. I forgot his tag partner already, but
Arn, how can you forget Arn Anderson, man?
Arn Anderson.
Yeah.
Hey, it's the first time I'm hearing about him. Uh,
Oh,
looks like
yeah,
it's
so I know. And again, to preface this, Drew is not a historian on wrestling here. He's not
no.
a huge
That
wrestling fan. So he's
no.
like, somebody came and just threw out, this whole new generation of wrestling. He's like, huh?
Yeah,
But it's
I only know about WWE. That's all I'm
okay.
kind of well versed with, but you know,
That's okay.
yeah, I'm learning. I'm learning. That's the whole point of the show. Have me learning and then gonna have my dad here give me the history behind all this wrestling and stuff like that and, learn together hopefully with you guys. But
So Arn's a legend. Arn was, been around for a long time before even this, just as much as Flair. He was in WWE previously with his tag partners, the Brain Busters. Gone blank on his name for some reason. I'll think of it in a few minutes. But Tully Blanchard, geez, yeah. So Tully Blanchard, his daughter right now is Tessa Blanchard. He was working at I think TNA.
oh, okay.
So they went from WWE back to WCW, and I think Tully didn't do much with him, and he was gone, and then Arn was still there with Flair, and they go back a long time. So part of the Four Horsemen and all that stuff with Ole Anderson back in the day. But
Oh, so
yeah,
Arn
so
Anderson was on the Four Horsemen.
absolutely.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I knew about the Four Horsemen. I only knew that Ric Flair was on the Four Horsemen because he's the only one I think out of the four that I'd be familiar with.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but yeah, Arn Anderson, he just looks like a foreman on a construction site. Like,
yeah. Tough dude, man. Tough
yeah,
dude. He's probably one of the toughest dudes in the business that you wouldn't want to mess with, honestly.
yeah,
And I got to work with Arn when I went to WWE in '01. He was part of the crew there that were doing putting matches together. They call them agents, you know, and putting together the match with the guys backstage. Producers now is what they call them. But yeah, totally great dude.
okay, awesome, awesome. Yeah, would you say that most most wrestlers who kind of just look that have that like heel look, that just menacing look would be like sweethearts like backstage, or was it just, you know, some of these guys they really just put themselves out there and that's who they were backstage as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you look at some of the bigger guys who are heels and come across as monsters, and they're absolutely some of the nicest guys. I
s-
mean,
yeah,
you look at and again, I can only speak from my experience and people I've dealt with, and that's WWE. I never worked for WCW, so Undertaker and Kane, probably two of the nicest guys you'll ever meet, and
really.
and they were the two of the biggest monsters ever in WWE when they first started. So you don't know, you can't judge a book by its cover, but a lot of these guys and with their heels or faces anyway are just really upstanding guys.
Yeah, and it's it's hard to look at them like that when they're throwing each other around in the ring and cutting promos at each other. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I during this tag match, I was just thinking about how we don't really see tag teams uh, being shown off in the same light as they were shown off in this episode, where they're not as prevalent as they are to the regular the regular roster of wrestlers. And
Yeah.
his my favorite tag team of all time, DX, with Triple H and Shawn Michaels. I grew up watching them, and it was just so entertaining to see them going up against other tag teams and having those matches. And it kind of had some nostalgia for me watching the tag match. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot like tag team matches were a big thing. Like it was pretty often that they would do these matches, but we don't really see them today.
Yeah, they're bringing it back. I mean, I think Vince kind of with WWE anyway, kind of wasn't high on tag matches. He really wanted to propel individuals, and that's where you make a lot of your money is individual talent on the merchandise and all that stuff. And he really wasn't high on tag matches and tag teams. But we're seeing a kind of a renaissance in tag team division right now in WWE with the War Raiders and the
Hmm.
New Day turning heel and now the tag champs and all that. So we're seeing the Creed brothers, who I'm a huge fan of the Creed brothers. Think they're amazing talent. Um, but yeah, for a long time it went away, and you know Sean and Hunter, they weren't really a tag team per se, but they did tag in some matches together for sure, but they're more of a faction, where then the New Age Outlaws were the tag team of the division or of the faction. Um,
Gotcha.
but this right here with the American males, Scotty Riggs and Bagwell, they're a decent tag team, and this match itself made Bagwell look like $1 million. He
Yeah.
looked really good. A lot of the heat went on to Scotty Riggs in this match. He took a lot of the heat, and Bagwell came back in and helped, get the upper hand. God, trying to remember who won that match. Um,
The tag match.
yeah,
It was Flair and um,
Flair and Anderson won that match.
yeah, I'm pretty sure they won
Okay,
that match.
but I don't
Um,
know if you saw it. I remember in that match there was a drop kick Bagwell had from the top rope and almost took Flair's head off.
yes, yes, yeah. There's a lot of stuff that I wrote down in my notes. I'm like, man, that was I could have just went south like real quick. Could have
Yeah.
just it's crazy. I feel like back then they don't want to say the word careless, but it wasn't safety. I don't think was number one priority
Well, so,
back then.
safety was definitely a priority. It was just I think it was more, aggressive, and it was more, kind of a rougher style back then.
Yeah.
Now it's a more cautious style because the moves have changed. The move sets are changed where it's more of a high risk move set,
Hmm.
so you got to be very careful in what you're doing, and which I don't like. This era right here of wrestling, 96, 95, 96, 97, 98, even, all the way up to 99. Definitely a more physical style of wrestling
Hmm.
and less, you know, flippity flop, as I call it.
Gotcha.
And
That's
to where,
Cirque du Soleil.
yeah, and with that, you have to stick it in a little bit more. And a lot of these guys will tell you, stick it in, and you're like, okay, as long as you get the blessing to stick it in, I mean, then you stick it in. And I'm
Hey,
sure this
that's
right here from Bagwell, this kick was from the top rope, drop kick was, Flair was like, hey, just make sure you connect and make it look good.
yeah.
Old school guys are like that,
Yeah,
just make it look good.
I kept rewinding it, seeing like, damn, did he really kick him? Did he like,
Yeah,
how'd they do that? But yeah,
I look
yeah,
great.
yeah. It was a fun match. It made me want more tag team matches and more uh what do you call it? Shed more light on the tag teams in WWE instead of just of course you're gonna have the solo guys, but I want maybe an equal disperse of attention to both sides.
Yeah,
But
I think
but the
we're starting to
roster.
see.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I think we're starting to see that more and more now.
Yeah,
I really think they're starting to build up the tag division again, and that's a great thing to have. Because I've always, like you, I was always a fan. When I was growing up, we had Demolition, the Rockers, the Heart Foundation, Strike Force, Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors, the Brainbusters with Arn and Tully. Um, and there was a lot of Barbarian and Warlord, and I mean there was so many tag teams. It was just crazy,
yeah,
and there was always a good heel manager too with them. There was always those, the Jimmy Harts and the Bobby Heenans and Slick and all those guys. So definitely I think there is definitely still a place in the wrestling business for tag division that is just as solid as a singles division. And I really see that Hunter and the guys at WWE now are putting more emphasis on exploring more than just your single men's division, because you're seeing a lot of women's matches. I mean, they're even closing out Raw almost on a weekly basis, closing out pay-per-views, and I think we're going to see more and more of that evolve.
yeah. That would be awesome. And that's another thing too is you have such a big roster, and I could see how it could be difficult to fit in certain things like that. I could see them on the cutting room floor being just like, all right, we got to get rid of this. We need to have more time for
Right.
the women's division, their feuds, and then the main feuds that are bringing in the money and bringing in the views and stuff like that. And I
Right.
could see how much of a risk it is to try something new when what you're already doing is making the money. You know,
Sure.
um,
Absolutely.
but
Absolutely.
but yeah, you
Yeah,
know,
this was a great match. This was a great tag match.
I agree.
I thought made everybody look really good, and that's right. Woman interfered and cost a match for Bagwell and
She like
and Riggs there.
threw something in one of the who was I'm blanking on their names, but
Yeah.
she
I
threw
think,
something in their eyes, in one of
yeah,
their eyes, but yeah,
and probably Scotty Riggs. He probably took the fall on that.
gotcha.
Uh, Bagwell was kind of looking like the Shawn Michaels of the team right there. Uh, so but yeah, that was a good match. And then after that, what
we
happened
had
after that?
we get to see how the Carolina Panthers work out. Um,
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah. Kevin Green and Steve McMichael, because they were getting ready to go up against Anderson and Flair, and
okay,
that
yeah,
was a great build. And I know this kind of looks cheesy now in 2025. Some things don't
yes,
age so well, but This was really good stuff back in '96, man,
Okay.
because WWE had used some football players. A lot of them retired, but here's Kevin Green, who's still an active football player. Big deal. And, especially WCW being the Southern promotion where, you have North Carolina, and so you have Flair country, right? And then you have Carolina Panthers with Green. So now you have this conflict there with the
Okay.
fans, getting them interested. And of course, Steve McMichael was doing commentary from the beginning of Nitro, the very first episode. And now, he's retired, but for a football player, he was doing great on commentary.
Okay.
Phenomenal commentary. And he has Dog Pepe, I think it was Dog Pepe, um, with him
Oh,
every
he
week.
was the guy with the Chihuahua that had like his own the Chihuahua had his own like headset.
Yeah, so
Okay.
clever, so
Okay.
much fun.
I didn't even know he was a
And
football player. That's
oh
interesting.
yeah, Bear Legend just recently passed away.
Oh man.
But um, yeah, so I thought this was a really smart move by WCW to capitalize on McMichael, who's grabbed the attention of the Bears fans and the football fans on commentary. And now you have Kevin Green coming in, and he looks huge and amazing. And to have them go against Flair and Anderson, two of the biggest heels right now in WCW, two of the biggest legends, you're really pulling in both fan bases right there. So clever move. The workout videos were pretty cheesy, but they worked back then.
Yeah,
And
at the time where it's all masculine, and you have you know Arnold being front and center of like being that action movie star, then you're seeing these guys work out. It made me want to work out.
yeah, yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
damn, what am I doing?
yeah, no joke. No, they all look good, man. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was good. It was a good promo to get you prepared for this match. So
Okay, so
uh,
that's what it was. It was like a prelude to a setup with a match. I wasn't under. I was like, this is a little weird seeing how the Carolina Panthers work out.
yeah, yeah, no, this is yeah. So it's off season too, right? Because this was May, so yeah, it's off season. So that
Okay.
worked for Kevin Green and everything else. I'm sure there was a lot of legal work. Hey, make sure he doesn't get hurt.
Yeah.
Uh, for the Panthers need him for come August, September. But then after that, then
It was Steve Dahl versus the Mauler,
so
and this match.
this is why we're talking about this episode today, right? Is because of what happens during this match, not because of the Mauler Steve Dahl match itself, but
Yeah.
what happens during the match. But the Mauler Mike Enos, and this is another issue I've always had with WCW back in the day. Um, they would change gimmicks on guys so many times. Like Mike Enos, right here's the Mauler. He was something else before, and he was,
The
he came back
Brawler.
from the Brawler. Well, the Brawler was in WWE. That would
Okay.
be American infringement, but yeah, and like with the Shark, we're going to see later, who was
Oh
John
man.
Tennant, who was so many other gimmicks as well, and Big Bubba, who was Big Bubba Rogers, and then just Big Bubba, and then the Mauler was just Mike Enos, and then Big Bad Mike Enos, and then Max was Max Muscle, and now just Max with two X's, and so edgy. Like this was the kind of thing that would just drove me nuts with WCW. It's like, stop changing gimmicks on people, just work on getting them over.
Yeah.
Just work on getting them over.
Yeah. It's
So I think creatively back before the whole NWO thing came along, it was kind of not as productive as they could have been with talent. But having Hogan there, and then during this match, we see Scott Hall come out, right? And this is
hmm
the beginning of the NWO. This is, we don't know at this point in time what's happening, but Scott Hall showing up on WCW Nitro was a huge deal. I mean, we already had Lex Luger come out in the very first Nitro, which was at the Mall of America. I feel they didn't capitalize too much on that. Um, it was a big deal at the time. He came out during the first match of the show and then disappeared, and then came out later to kind of cut a promo. So it was kind of weird. Then they had Medusa return about a month before this, where she dropped a WWE Women's title in the trash can.
hmm
Another huge deal. but then she disappeared off TV for a few weeks and then came back against Sherry and then disappeared again. So, you know, this is now the third big thing to happen, but this, for some reason, was really a more captivating scenario because I think some people really thought that Scott Hall was still Razor Ramon in WWE
Hmm.
and he was still under contract and were not aware of what was going on. So I think that was why it was such a huge deal, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, you could tell by the crowd when he came out, everyone kind of just lost their mind, and the crowd didn't know what to do at the same time. They're like, well, "Do we boo him?" They're like, "What? Do we cheer? What's like,
Yeah.
well, this is crazy."
Going
Um,
on. Yeah.
but
More
man,
confused.
the look of Scott Hall, I've always thought that he, I have a feeling that um, they being DC Comics took his likeness to create Superman when he came back after fighting Doomsday, because he just looks like 80s or 90s Superman. Whenever Superman had the long hair and you know Jerry curl and was all like you just very the muscles were very defined when within that art style. And so every time I've seen Razor Ramon, Scott Hall, I've just thought of Superman because he just looks like Superman. But then
Yeah.
he starts talking.
Right, right, right. Then it's like, oh, okay. There's a Cuban gangster, you know, kind of
Yeah, yeah.
thing. But yeah, I mean this is Scott's third time in WCW. You know, he was there in the tag champ, then he came back in the early '90s where Diamond Dallas Page was his manager. He was called the Diamond Stud,
Okay,
right?
interesting.
And this is before Dallas started wrestling. You know, Dallas was always a manager at first. And then he went to WWE and was Razor Ramon, which was such a great gimmick. Got over huge. Um, you know, but
Yeah,
contract ran out and WCW offered a lot of money and here we are, you know, May 27th or May 20th, whatever it is, 1996,
Memorial Day.
Memorial Day, yeah.
Yeah,
And you know, it's a holy shit moment. It really is for the wrestling business at that time. I mean, I think if people look back on it now who've never, younger people who've never seen that era of wrestling would probably go, okay, no big deal. But let me tell you something, man. This shook the foundations of WWE, right?
hmm
So it was a huge deal, and I don't think WWE were ready for it. You know, so Scott comes out, does a little promo,
yep.
calls out,
The
you know,
Macho Man. I feel like he just likes doing that impression.
yeah, yeah, he's doing that for sure. And then Ken Doll, you know, referring to Eric Bischoff, you know, and Scheme Gene, you know, so he's pulling all the stuff that WWE
Billionaire Ted
used,
as well.
Billionaire
Yeah.
Ted, because WWE had a skit not too long ago before this, or maybe it was after. I don't know, but it was Shawn Michaels and they were in like a CNN studio mocking WCW and Scheme Gene and Billionaire Ted and and Hulk Hogan and the Nacho Man and all that. So they were ripping on WCW, but yeah. So this was a big deal, and Scott, you know, then left the ring and left it open to like what is going on. So, you know, they kind of tried to push it off and not talk about it, making it look as real as they can and move on with the show. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It was. Yeah. I thought it was like you said, younger generations they're gonna be like, all right, whatever. I was just like, okay. Like I had a little bit of context from what you've told me before about all this and the importance of starting with this episode. And so I had that little bit of context to be like, okay, so I can kind of see how it would be a big deal, but without that context, I would just been like, it's Razor Ramon.
Oh yeah. I mean, the significance of this episode right here is just so big, you know, in the what's to come
Yeah,
uh with not just WCW but the wrestling business in general. Um so yeah, this was the beginning of not just the Monday Night Wars, but just an elevation of the wrestling industry as a whole, you know?
yeah,
Because right now, WCW is on TV. This happens. And again, this is the first 2 hour WCW Nitro ever, right?
Yeah, and it happens within the first 30 minutes too.
Correct.
Yeah.
And they're unopposed on the other channel with WWE Raw, because Raw doesn't start until 9 o'clock, right? This is between the 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock hour right now. So they're unopposed, no competition from WWF,
Wow.
WWE. And so this all wrestling fans, most wrestling fans are glued to WCW right now to see what's going on.
And then boom, Scott Hall shows up, and they're just like,
all-
well, we got to keep watching. We got to see if he's gonna show up again.
right, right. So WCW has kind of a a kickstart here for that second hour, and before Raw comes on. And Bischoff, mentions it. Well, if this guy wants to call me out, he can come out here later. So now you're like, oh shit, he's going to come out again. Do I watch Raw? Do I keep tuning in here? What do I do? So
Yeah.
it is a bit of a big deal. But so they move on from that though, and try and not talk about it while they're talking about it, not
Yes.
mentioning it. And then yeah, next is Dallas Page over Pittman, Sergeant Pittman,
Yeah, this is
who's out
this
with
is the first. Oh, and then Pittman came out with Teddy Long before
Teddy
he
Long.
before he became the Undertaker's herald. Which it was very weird seeing Teddy Long. I was like, damn, I didn't know he all these people. I didn't know how much history they've had with the wrestling business, and so I was kind of
Yeah,
ignorant to that fact before seeing this episode and just seeing Teddy Long there. I was like, whoa, this is crazy.
yeah. Teddy was in the wrestling a long time, and then he transitions from that to being a referee, and then
Okay.
when he comes to WWE, he's a ref, I believe. Was he? Um, and then he transitions back to being a manager again, and then the general manager of, I think it was SmackDown.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, um, this match was what it was. I mean,
I
uh,
honestly I enjoyed Diamond Dallas Page. This is the first time I've
oh,
seen him wrestle and just see his energy in the ring. I mean, when the match starts, he's already mocking Pittman, and I'm like, this is great. This is this is amazing. And then he just getting thrown around the ring, throwing Pittman around the ring, and the hair that he had. Same thing with who is the other guy that previous match. Steve Dahl, they had the same hairstyle. It reminded me of Dolph Ziggler in a way. Just how they moved in the ring and how they would sell the hits and or sell the
yeah,
bumps and stuff like that. But I thought I was pretty entertained with this match. First time seeing Diamond Dallas Page wrestle, and I was entertained.
yeah. Now, Dallas has always been a solid wrestler, man, and he's been around the business before he started wrestling. Like I said, as a manager, he's really in tune with everything going on. So he really wanted to get in there and work. And so when he did, man, he was so good. He was so good.
Yeah,
But he was already a little older because he'd been managing for so many years. And I finally got that break in WCW. I think it was Dusty Rhodes, could be wrong, who finally said, "Hey, man, get in there, and let's go." I don't know the full backstory on that, but yeah, this was. I mean, wasn't crazy about Pittman. Never was. He came out with this,
yeah.
kind of scowl on his face and all kind of gimmicky. Um, but Dallas, brought out the best in him here, and it was a decent match, and Dallas went over, I believe.
Yeah, Dallas won. Dallas won
Okay.
that match. Think I don't think there was any, or was there any interference? I don't remember.
I don't
Um,
know. I don't
but
know.
but Dallas
Uh,
was a heel, right? He was a heel in that
no,
match.
I don't think so.
No? Oh,
No, 'cause Pittman was out there with Teddy Long. Um,
gotcha.
But
Okay.
he might have been a heel who was just, finding his way, and they're trying to feel him out, put him up against another heel, see how the crowd reacts. Oftentimes they do that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. The one thing about that match that I found hilarious was the very beginning where uh, Diamond Dallas Page tells Pittman, "Hey, drop will give me 20," and then Diamond Dallas Page starts doing push-ups, and then Pittman just looks at him and then tries to do one-arm push-ups, and then realizes he can't.
yeah, handshake, stuff like
Yeah,
that.
that was hilarious. But
Yeah,
but yeah, and then oh yeah, it ended with the Diamond Cutter. He ended the
right.
match with his finisher, the Diamond Cutter, back when finishers I think were actual finishers.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
but
Uh, Yeah, so then they moved on to the package about Savage and how he was crazy and he needs to be locked up or seen a psychiatrist or
Yes.
whatever it may be. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed what they were doing with Savage here, making him to be this crazy dude who was just unhinged and what's he gonna do next kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of cool. Um, what happened after that? Oh, and Shark with Gene backstage. Shark is gonna be working the Giant later in the
I
match.
I I
Or-
can't stand the makeup. The makeup on his
Yeah,
beard. It looked awful. It
yeah.
reminded me of the Batman '66 show where they had to paint over Caesar Ramon's mustache, and they just painted over his beard. I'm like, I don't even know what they're trying to go for. Like, it's supposed to be teeth, right?
It's a shark.
I know, but like, it doesn't look like it. It just looks weird.
Hey, it's
Yeah,
1996.
yeah, I guess give him a break.
Yeah,
Yeah, this
but
match was whatever. With
well,
the
we're not at the match yet. Basically, that was just a promo with Mean Gene
oh yeah yeah
scheming
yeah
backstage, and then they did a video package on how great Hulk Hogan is and how much of a salt of the earth human being he really is, and how the world is such a better place.
yeah
And it was basically anyway. I'll try and keep it clean, but it's the way WCW just played to Hogan during this time was just like, oh god, and this is part of why people started booing him. I mean, he was already getting booed in WWE before he left,
hmm
took some time off, and then came to WCW. Um, but when you keep shoving it down the throats like this, it's kind of like, what is a point, you know?
yeah.
Um, but and then that ends the first hour of Nitro on this historic episode, 2 hour, first ever 2 hour Nitro.
Was this the first 2 hour wrestling program like ever? Like, was this the first like?
Yeah, yeah, I think
Okay.
so. Yeah, because Raw was still only an hour, so I don't think they'd ever done like a test of 2 hours. It was just always a 1 hour, show. So yeah, so this ended the first hour for Nitro, and they come back from commercial, and it's Heenan and Bischoff, to kick off hour one, or sorry, hour two of Nitro, while on the other channel now Raw is starting, and right away in the ring it's Goldust and Marlena, right?
Yeah, because
And
prior to this second hour, Bischoff and Heenan weren't commentators. It was
right,
who
it
was
was
it again?
Zbyszko and Schiavone, Larry
That's right.
Zbyszko and Tony Schiavone.
Yeah, I like
Um,
Bischoff and Heenan a
oh,
lot better.
absolutely. Oh yeah, Bischoff and Heenan were awesome here. I mean,
Yeah.
I love, when Bobby was allowed to be, his funny heel self, and he's just with another one person where you could bounce things off them. I thought it was awesome. The 3-man teams I never liked in WCW. It never worked for me. But uh, here, Bischoff and Heenan I thought were awesome. They really sold what happened earlier with Scott Hall and what was to come. And but then on the other channel, you had Lawler and McMahon, who were also awesome together.
Yeah.
You know, and so now you got Bischoff saying he's not going to acknowledge what happened. Well, he's acknowledging it. Um, and we're going to kick off this hour with the Shark versus the Giant.
Yeah.
While
The
on WWE, they have the Ultimate Warrior versus Goldust in the King of the Ring qualifier.
oh, so that's
Which,
happening at the same time as this match.
yeah,
Yeah, I would have
yeah,
rather watched Goldust than Ultimate Warrior.
yeah. It was actually a good match. It was a decent. Warrior actually looked pretty good in this match.
Okay.
If you choose the channel over to USA Network, yeah, Warrior actually looked pretty decent. And Ahmed Johnson got involved in that match, and then ended up being a double count out, but it was a 16-minute match over on Raw where you had, I don't know how long the Shark and Giant match went for, but
Too
Giant obviously,
too long. It went on for too long.
yeah, but it was good because you have the Giant going up against a big guy, right? You have to, if you're going to have the Giant as a champion, you can't feed him these little dudes, otherwise it's
Yeah.
going to be like, well, easy, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
It's true.
so So it's got to be captivating, and you got the shark out there, which he's not going to win the championship because he looks like a shark, and I don't think that would be, hey, look at our champion, he's a shark.
Yeah.
So but it was a decent match. It was a good match that really got over the Giant as far as his strength because he was able to pick up Shark and drop him
And
and all
that's
that
the
stuff.
big show, right? Later to be
That's the
known as
big
the big
show.
show. Okay.
Big show
Yeah.
against the Earthquake, basically.
Okay. Okay. So,
Uh,
the Giant, was that something that they wanted to just like say to like maybe like have people familiarize like it with Andre the Giant, or do you think it was just kind of just like, he's a giant, we just call him the Giant?
no, yeah, no. When he first came in, they billed him as Andre's son,
Oh, okay. I did not know that. That's
and
interesting.
that just was so like, that
Yeah.
they kind of died that out
I mean, look what they did
gradually.
with Kurt Angle and his son. Even though they should have made Chad Gable Kurt Angle's son, or like, they could
Yeah,
have done something with that, but I digress. Getting a little off
yeah, no, no,
topic here, but
yeah. When you do stuff where people know that's not really his kid, it just comes off as like,
yeah.
because they even did that with Vince and Hornswoggle in a comedic way, which was funny. That was
Yeah.
hilarious, and it was meant to be hilarious.
Yeah.
But when you're putting it as hey, this is Andre the Giant's son, it's like, oh, please come on,
Yeah,
stop.
give me a break. Come on.
Yeah.
There's
So,
no way he's having a kid with anybody.
well, actually, he did.
Oh, he
He
had a
had
kid?
he
Damn, that
has
poor
a daughter.
woman.
Well, that's yeah. But yeah, he's got a daughter out there somewhere.
That's crazy.
But
I didn't know that.
get back to the
No,
match.
no
It was
disrespect on Andre the Giant either. I'm just making jokes, but yeah.
yes, yeah. I know the oversensitive crowd out there. Um, but yeah, so the Giant and Shark was a good match for what it was. Showed off the Giants' strength and being dominant as a world champion, which really puts him over for his future match with Hogan. Bubba came in, who was the big boss man. Big Bubba Rogers, he comes in and shaves half of
Yes.
Shark's head at the end. Um,
Yeah.
taking over taking over Brutus the Barber Beefcake's gimmick since Beefcake is now Zodiac, who ends up being the disciple, who ends up being all these
Yeah,
different gimmicks.
back to your talking point of they just
Oh
can't
my
stick
god.
with a gimmick.
Oh, yeah, awful. But anyway, so he shaves half his head, and that's that.
Yeah.
We move on, and I think at this point the match between Warrior and Goldust is still going on over on USA Network.
Okay.
Yeah, but then you have Luger come out next to go against, and he's the TV
Max.
champ, Max, who was
Yeah, the
Max
world the
was
world television champ. He's the world television champ, which
he
I
was the
just
world heavyweight champ just a few months ago. Now he's a world television champ.
was it the same belt and they just changed the name, or
No, the TV title is
the TV title?
kind of yeah. It's just it's supposed to be a championship that's defended every week on TV when they had their WCW Saturday Night before Nitro even came along. So it's been around for a long time. And it's a title that you see defended every week on TV. So while the world champ maybe wouldn't defend his title all the time, unless it's a big event, you knew you were going to see this title defense every week on TV, which kind of drew people in. So great
Gotcha.
concept.
That's why
Great concept.
it's called the World Television. Gotcha. I was like,
Right.
that's a weird name, and but I didn't know the history of what the title actually meant. I guess the
Right.
same thing with the 24/7 title. If you were to tell me, yeah, this title's called a 24/7 title, I'd be like, what the hell? That's a weird name. But then yeah, awesome, awesome. Yeah, I had no clue, no clue.
Yeah. But yeah, so he's going to defend it against Max, who was Max Muscle, who was Max with one X. Now he's not Max with two X's. So
Ooh.
yeah, and he looks very uninterested to be there. He looks like he would rather
Yes.
be backstage sticking needles in his eyeballs,
Yeah.
and you know, he, he's a big dude. And
Hmm.
again, this was another match that put Luger over as, oh, look, he can beat a guy this size, and you know, he Giant just beat a guy, big size. Now Luger's doing it, and Luger wants that title, so here we go, putting both guys over, on a bigger
Yeah.
stage. But yeah, Max, I thought, if he really had have been you know, in a different mindset and more into learning the ways of the business, he could have been something, man, because he had a great look.
Yeah, yeah. And the early on, I think it was Bischoff makes a comment about his hair. He's like, "Yeah, it's a perfect hairstyle for the chair."
Yeah. Yeah.
Basically, it's like, all right, that's a pretty funny joke. But I like that little bit of commentary. Um, kind of making fun of the wrestlers at the same time. You have one commentator who's rooting for one wrestler and the other one's rooting for the other, and the commentators are constantly like going back and forth, be like, defending their wrestler that they like, and I've always liked that, and I don't think we see um, that nowadays.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. I'd love for the announcers to get back to, the heel commentator just, being ridiculous and
yeah,
being a heel. It's gone to the way of, well, we want to look like a ESPN show, right? We want to look like commentators are knowledgeable about the people and the industry and what's going on in the ring. Well, this is pro wrestling and it's
hmm
entertainment. And if you're going to call it sports entertainment, let's be entertaining on all aspects of it, right? So get yourself a good heel announcer. And
yeah.
I'm telling you, the shows become so like one of the main reasons why WWE was so popular was because of the dynamic between Jerry Lawler and Jim Ross and how they just played off each other and how Jerry Lawler was always with the heels and Jim Ross was just your straight play by play and it was just so much fun. And that's lost and I'd love for them to bring that back.
Do you, do
But
you, do you think it has to do because what are our commentators over at WWE? We got Pat McAfee, Michael Cole, Wade Barrett. Um, who's that
yeah,
other guy? He's got like tattoos on his neck. Is he still a commentator? He used to be
Sam
a
Bor
wrestler.
Baron Corbin's not there. I don't know
Okay.
what he's doing. But yeah, you have Wade on SmackDown,
Which
right?
I
With
think he could be a good heel commentator. I haven't watched SmackDown in a while, so if I'm wrong, correct me. But
I totally agree.
yeah, he's got that look. He knows the business. He's been a heel
He's a heel
before.
pretty much his whole career in WWE.
Yeah,
Uh, so he may as well be a heel commentator. And I'm not talking about supporting one heel and then saying how great, the big baby face is later on. It's 20, 100%, 24/7
yeah,
heel announcing.
yeah,
Look ridiculous. It doesn't matter. Doesn't you want the fans to go, no, it's bullshit. I saw it. Like people start paying more attention, and they start taking sides and they start supporting the heel,
yeah.
or sorry, the baby face and really wanting to hate the heel more because this announcer is, advocating for his cheating and all that. And, I think there's not enough of that now to where, it's just constant like praise for the baby faces and, praise for the heels too. And it's like, well,
Do you think
let's
that would help people or help wrestlers get over uh faster if we had like the commentators like having that dynamic as they used to?
definitely help the heels get over as heels.
Yeah,
I think, if you're constantly just both of you praising the baby face and then maybe not talking so much about the heel, only one is, and it's kind of like you want that one guy to just be that, advocate for the bad guys, right? And
yeah,
and have that understanding that this is the guy who's the heel, this is the guy that's the face or the girl that's the heel and face. And, I'm gonna lie and do everything I can on their behalf to make them more of a heel than they are in the ring, because that's
yeah.
commentary is used TV to get somebody over. You know,
hmm
if the commentators are just, doesn't matter who you are, if you come out there and commentators just shit on you, you're not going to get over. Doesn't matter about what the live crowd. There's a bigger audience at home watching. You know,
Yeah,
and you really want those announcers to fall into. I feel again subjective, that we need heel announcers and draw that line.
I agree, and I'm not being subjective. It needs to happen.
Yes, you're right. You got it. Whatever Drew says
Yeah,
goes.
but yeah, it needs to happen. WWE, come on, step up your game.
Send me an email to Paul Levesque right now.
Yeah, Triple H.
Yeah. So anyway, Luger beat Max,
Yep.
the torque the rack, right? And then this next one, Brad Armstrong, Bobby Walker. Uh, Decent match. Brad Armstrong was a great wrestler. He was awesome. And
Yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. Um,
yeah,
it's just Bobby kept messing up on those top rope
uh,
jumps. I was like, oh, and I feel like it ended early because they're like, oh, I'm sorry, what was that?
he almost had a bad one there to finish there.
Yes, and I feel like that's why they ended it early, or maybe I could be wrong, but it felt like like all right, we're done, stop that, because it felt like it
Yeah.
just kind of did that WCW. All right, we're done, it's over, next.
No, I think that was the finish. It was just it botched
Okay.
a little bit for that because it was supposed to be an upset finish, right? It was supposed to be like the student beating the teacher, right?
Hmm.
Kind of thing. Because he came from the power plant, and Brad Armstrong was kind of his teacher there. And probably you don't know this, so here's a little information for you, and I'm sure a lot of people watching do know, but that's fine. Brad Armstrong is the brother of Road Dogg Jesse James, the New Age Outlaws,
Okay.
DX. So
Oh,
they're brothers.
okay. DX.
Um,
Enough said.
Enough said.
I will always praise DX, my favorite faction, tag team, whatever you want to call them. But yeah,
Yeah. Um, but yeah, so this decent match, and got the upset win. That hard work paid off. My
yeah,
hard work, Bob.
there it is. And yeah, I don't really have much to say other than I thought it was a good match.
Yeah.
It's just those ropes must have been slippery or something.
Yeah, I mean, well, here's the thing with WCW rings, the ropes were cable with kind of a sleeve over them,
Okay,
so they weren't really like WWE rings. They're actual rope, and then they just tape around it, right?
gotcha. Okay,
So the WCW ropes were definitely a little more slick and dangerous for doing that kind of stuff. So I mean, he's not at fault there. It's just one of those things you got to be more mindful of. Hey, if you're gonna do this, be
yeah.
careful. You could end up real bad. But then what? We had Regal next. Regal with
Ah,
Jeeves.
this is my favorite match of this episode, just because
Tell me
Regal,
why. And by the
Regal.
way, everybody that's watching, we want your feedback on these episodes too, and tell us what you
Yes,
thought. Right? So
yes.
make sure. But tell me why you love this match.
Just Regal's charisma and his energy. From the moment he steps in the ring, I'm just like I could watch this guy, read a phone book at this point because like he just has that energy, that charisma to just keep you glued to the screen.
Yeah.
Um, that was it. That's the only reason I like this match.
So good. Regal
Yeah,
is so good. And
yeah.
you talk earlier about, hey, with these heels who are nice guys. You want to talk about one of the nicest guys that you could ever meet. Uh, and he talks very low when he's talking to you.
Really? Is
And
he even British?
oh god, yeah, oh yes, yes, yes. He's been from Blackpool, England. He's been wrestling since he was 14, right?
Wow.
He went wrestling the circuses that would go around, and then went to Otto I forget the guy's name. He was a big German promoter back then in the day in Germany. He went and wrestled there when he was a kid, like 16, 18, whatever. He was wrestling on the Superstars of Wrestling with Big Daddy and Giant Haystacks and Fit Finley um, in the UK before then he came to England, right?
Yeah.
We've been wrestling a long time already. Oh my God, one of the toughest. Oof, yeah, that's a guy you wouldn't want to mess with. Uh, Yeah, super nice guy though. You'd have to do something really bad to really piss him off.
Okay.
Uh, but
Like
what
like
a great
like pee in his teacup.
he in his teacup,
Yeah.
Chris Jericho. But yeah, no, that was a good match, and they were always you have to appreciate his style, and his mic work has always been solid. It's just like you know he'll throw in a joke here and there, and you have to be really paying attention to get it. But he's a great dude.
Yeah, I feel like he out of everybody that was on that episode, I just feel like he's got it. Like he could do anything in this business, and
Oh yeah,
he can make it entertaining. If commentator, just a ref, I'm sure he can make
yeah.
it entertaining in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, I really enjoyed it just for him. just for him.
Yeah.
Were you expecting me to give you another answer or?
No, no, not at
Okay.
all. I thought you might enjoy it, and I thought you might enjoy knowing you, you know?
Yeah.
Alex Wright looked good here though too, I thought Alex Wright was really good, and I think, and that's the thing with Regal is Regal can go out there and although he's got that, catch as can style that he has, real old school, wrestling style, um, he can mix it up with anybody of any style. I mean, you can put a luchador in there with him and he'd have a great match. You can put in the Giant and he'd have a great match. You put in Alex Wright, who's more of a kind of a cruiserweight style, not luchador, but
Yeah.
in between kind of thing,
Straight
and
baby face.
straight babyface.
Like
Yeah,
he's like
women loved him. Yeah,
I mean he's a good looking dude, so you know.
yeah, he had some good moves. So he's definitely doing the right thing there. And then over on WWE, you had uh backstage, you had DiBiase with Stone Cold Steve Austin
Ooh.
because he was his manager when he first came into WWE as a ringmaster, which was a horrible gimmick. Um, you know,
Who had that gimmick? Was it Steve Austin or was it DiBiase?
awesome.
Austin, okay.
So, he was his $1 million champion kind of thing. And so DiBiase stated, hey, Savio Vega, since the match, they had a pay-per-view the night before where the lights went out, the electricity went out, and only 2 matches got shown.
Mhm.
So during this episode of Raw, they're kind of trying to apologize and say, hey, we got the Beware of Dog pay-per-view last night got screwed up because of electricity. We're going to have Beware of Dog 2 tomorrow night. We're going to have the matches that you missed and different matches, rematches, whatever it may be. And so DiBiase was telling Savio Vega, you beat Austin and I'll quit WWE. I'll retire from WWE kind of thing, which is what happens. They put Austin on his own and he's able to be Stone Cold Steve Austin by himself instead of now a manager, and DiBiase left. But then back on WCW, Sting and
Yeah, Sting and Scott Steiner. Um this was and now is Scott because I know there's two Steiners. What's the
Scott,
other sorry?
Rick,
Rick Steiner.
Rick.
Who's the one that comes out with the chainmail later on, like in their career?
That's Scott. That's
That's
the guy you're
Scott?
seeing right there.
Okay,
He had a
okay.
huge transformation from
Yes, yes. I was like, there's no way that this is that guy, but yeah, I was now that you tell me, I'm like, oh, I guess it was. But
no,
but yeah, I actually really like this match as well. This was
yeah.
very entertaining. My first match to see like I think would you say that this is Sting in his prime or uh you know
No, God, that's hard to say because he really reinvented himself later, with the Crow Sting,
yeah,
you know. Uh so I don't know. This is because he was world champion before this, he was definitely on top for a while. That might have been prime Sting right there. This
okay,
was kind of I mean, I'm not saying that, and again, I'm not saying that Sting was past his prime, but he was definitely doing some great matches still. But there was no real, where are we going with him right now?
gotcha.
He was with Luger for a little bit, and Luger's then chasing the title. And then what's Sting doing? What's he chasing? Now he's going up against Steiner, but for what? I mean,
Because they're both faces, right? In this match,
yeah,
or yeah,
yeah, yeah. This was again, I think, another test to see where we're going to go with Steiner because again, with Scott Hall coming in, you know, and there was a whole new direction for the company, you know, because they knew they were going to bring Kevin Nash in just shortly after, right?
yeah,
And they knew they were going to go with some kind of faction, and they're looking at, well, how can we build other guys to be, the cornerstone of this company, and somebody that as big as Scott, who and hell of a wrestler, you know, is it time to take him out of a tag and put him in singles? So let's test the waters here with this, and let's see where we can go with it.
hmm
So this was a good match, and it made a lot of sense. And Luger coming out, and then Rick coming out, or vice versa. Rick came out, Luger came out, and double DQ, and really set up a good tag team feud there between these two. But again, Sting and Luger not really a tag team. They're more buddies who fell out and got back together, and fell out and got back together, and it's like don't trust each other but love each other, and it's you know,
Yeah.
and that's the thing leading up to this right here. For the last year and a half, so many title changes with WCW. I know they're trying to captivate and they're trying to get you, you know, interested in the show. Like, oh, title change. Oh, change again. But after a while, it kind of gets like, oh, well, you know, hot potato with the tag team or with the championship. It's not, it doesn't end up being good after a while.
Yeah.
But now we have, that match was a double DQ over on the other channel. You got the Godwins, Smoking Guns, and that's a schmoz at the end there where the Smoking Guns just won the tag team belts the last night, and Sonny gets involved, and the Goblins get involved, and the Smoke win and keep their titles.
I did
Um,
not watch Raw, so I have no idea what.
yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing out there for what they're up against as far as ratings
Gotcha.
go.
Gotcha.
And then their main event was Vader versus Ahmed Johnson with Owen Hart,
Okay.
and Owen attacked Ahmed, jumped off the top rope with his cast on his arm, and knocked Ahmed out, and Vader was able to get the win. Uh, and then going backstage, right? So now this match is over, right? They're going backstage with Ahmed on the stretcher,
Hmm.
and here comes Goldust, who's already had a bit of a thing with Ahmed Johnson. Ahmed came out in his match earlier in the night, and Goldust, because Ahmed's out, decides he's going to give him mouth to mouth, right? Because that's the character he's playing, is like this flamboyant, you know,
Yeah.
is he gay? Is he not kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so while that's happening on WWE, over on WCW, while the tag match is over, here comes Scott Hall back out to the announce booth to confront Eric Bischoff, right?
Yeah, the Ken doll.
Ken doll, right? So now you have the biggest, thing happening in wrestling in a long time, and Scott Hall's challenging WCW because he's an outsider to a six-man match. You get your three against our three, and Bischoff, what do you mean we? What do you mean? What do you mean we? And all that stuff. And we are going to do this, and while over in the other channel, you have Goldust giving mouth to mouth to Ahmed Johnson, and Ahmed wakes up, chases Goldust, and it kind of gets Bob Holly up against the wall and chokes him a little bit. Where's Goldust? And Ahmed was not that good, but then he goes down the hallway looking for Goldust while Scott Hall says, "I'll bring my three, you bring your three, and we'll get it on." I don't know. I mean, I don't know what's most appealing out of those two for you.
I mean, it depends what you're into. It
You're into
dep-
getting mouth to mouth from Goldust, or you're into, you know, seeing Scott
yeah,
Hall.
yeah, it depends what you're into. But so at this time, do you think most people, when Scott Hall says, "I'll bring my three," do you think most people were thinking we might see people who came from WWE that are going to be on?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, because that the fans at this point, because remember, internet was very much in its infancy right now.
Yeah.
There was no, dirt sheets at this point, really. There was
Yeah.
maybe some message boards and stuff like that, and there might have been some dirt sheets. I don't know, but it wasn't as prevalent as it is today, to where they're being told this and that by the locker rooms not happy. Um, but I really believe a lot of fans out there, you know, maybe weren't on the internet at the time, believed that Scott Hall was coming in to take shots at WCW.
Hmm.
And him saying, I got two more guys and there's going to be three of us, like, holy shit, who else is coming from WWE to come down here and destroy WCW? Because it was made clear, I'm here to destroy WCW. I'm here to kick WCW's ass. So it made it seem like, okay, they're here on a mission from Vince, or
Yeah.
whatever. That was what they wanted you to believe, and some people did, and that obviously brought on the lawsuit.
Awesome.
Yeah, but I mean, they had to come out eventually and say, once Kevin Nash had debuted They had to come out and say, these guys don't work for anybody. They work for WCW, and so
That's funny. That's funny. Yeah.
But no, it was a good show. It was a groundbreaking show. Crazy thing is, even though they had that extra hour, you know, Raw got a 3.29 rating, and WCW only had a 2.78.
Is this
So
out of
Raw still won.
5? Out of
Hmm?
10?
No, it's a no. So it's a TV rating, right? So
Yeah.
the Nielsen ratings were basically Nielsen would select, houses, millions of houses that are going to, you know, see what you're watching, basically. And whatever you turn on your channel to, that's the rating it gets, right? Um, so there's 3.29 million, I think is what it is. So 3.29 is the
Gotcha.
rating,
Gotcha.
and then 2.78, right? So this was really some good numbers. I mean, WCW and WWE had been back and forth, you know, week after week, maybe 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 weeks, but nothing more than that. And now this kind of reignited the numbers. And even though WWE won, the numbers were still really good for that time.
Mhm.
For WCW, 2.78 was really good rating at that time. 3.29, phenomenal, right? So uh, the fact that WWE still won the ratings was crazy. But they would lose them next week. And I don't know if that's the week. I'd have to go back and double check, see what the full show was. Maybe that's something we do next time. But
Yeah.
it was a crazy time. It was a crazy, crazy night. And WWE was live. They would be taped every other week, but this was live. Uh, and that was WCW Nitro with Scott Hall re-debuting as Scott Hall. No gimmicks needed,
Yeah.
but
Just straight Scott Hall.
straight Scott Hall in the guise of Razor Ramon.
Yeah. Give me the macho man. I think he just really liked doing that impression or something.
Yeah,
Maybe like I
I
don't
liked
know.
him. I liked him to do it.
Yeah. Maybe somebody was just like, "Man, that's a good impression. You should do that. You should make fun of Macho Man out there or something."
Yeah,
But no, I thought it was very entertaining. Especially when you have uh the history uh you know to go back and look at, and you have that in mind when you watch this episode, then that's I think that's what made it very entertaining for me, where I'm like, man, like imagine this would be so crazy if like watching this at the time, but for
yeah,
somebody going back and watching it now with not knowing any history, not knowing who these people are, it's just kind of like, all right, whatever, like I don't really understand what's going on. But
yeah,
and that's I think what's very interesting about every era of wrestling is you can take an episode of Raw, WCW, of whatever, and watch it from whichever era you want. And without that history, it's just you're just gonna enjoy it at face value. But if you have that history, then you can totally just like lose yourself within those episodes and just be
yeah,
like, man, this is it's insane where wrestling is today, versus where it was back then, you know.
right,
Um, but yeah, that's what I find so interesting about wrestling is it's such a simple sport, such a simple way of entertainment, but if you really look into it, you get to dissect it layer by layer, and you just see how big it is when it comes to how big it is when it comes to entertainment. Um,
yeah,
and yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
I mean, it really is. It's the only form of sports and entertainment that is on all year long.
yeah.
No off weeks. There's no, you know,
Arguably the
post.
only one that's scripted. The arguably,
Yeah, sure, predetermined, I guess is what you could
yeah.
say. But these guys, man, and now, it's a lot easier now because there's not. I don't even think they do house shows anymore. So they're not. The schedule's not as busy now for them as far as in ring goes.
Hmm.
Um, but that helps them heal a lot quicker, and you know, uh, the roster is definitely bigger than it used to be, so that helps if somebody does get hurt. You can always slide somebody else in there. Um, but it's definitely changed and evolved. And looking back at this 1996 were the very beginning of the Monday Night Wars, in my opinion, and the whole catalyst to what would be the Attitude Era on both sides.
Hmm.
You know, it's crazy to see how far the business has come, and it's great, and it's evolved so much, and it's still evolving, and it will always evolve.
Yeah.
There's things that work now that wouldn't have worked then, and there's things that work then that wouldn't work now. I mean, it's just the way it goes. It's just a form of entertainment. It's kind of like making movies, right? I mean, the way you made movies in 1970 is not how you make movies now.
Yeah.
Um, Superman's coming out next month, right? It's 77 Superman.
Two more months. July.
Two more,
Comes out July. Yeah.
and 77 Superman, right? Compared to how they make Superman now, CGI and all that.
Yeah.
Obviously, can't do CGI in wrestling, but how you present it is totally different.
You could try. You could try to do CGI.
Yeah. But yeah, it's the business has evolved, and I tell you, this episode right here of WCW Nitro was a big pivotal moment in how the business evolved, and a lot of credit goes to Eric Bischoff, um, Scott Hall, and also on the other side of the channel, on the other channel, Steve Austin and Vince. There's a lot that goes into now. What are you going to do on the other side, right? Because before it was, let's put on a good show, ratings, 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 up and down, up and down. But now it was getting personal, right? It was getting personal with the Medusa, trash can incident. It's getting personal with Bischoff would give away results on TV, and
Hmm.
when WWE was recording Raw, and so it was not very ethical. Uh but and now you have one of your stars going over there acting like he's still your star, and saying he's there to cause problems, probably dragging away an audience. So it was definitely such a pivotal moment in the wrestling. And maybe next time we can talk about Kevin, the impact that had.
And is that the next episode, or
I don't recall. I have to double
we'll
check
have
on
to
that.
check? Yeah. It'll probably be in the description of this video of what episode it is, because uh yeah, we'll just talk about episode up by episode, and maybe do some other things here and there, uh, on the show. And we highly recommend watching the episode before you watch this, or watch it along as we're talking about it. Um,
Yeah.
that's the purpose of these videos. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. You know, I think we pretty much covered it all. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, just if you're watching this, and you have feedback on this episode that we talked about, put it in the comments.
Yeah,
Let
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 us.
us know what you thought about either a promo or a match, or you know the impact it had on you. Maybe when you were watching it live because you're as old as I am, or you went back and watched it because you're as young as Drew is.
Yeah.
Uh, you uh, how it affected your outlook.
Yeah.
How you went about watching future episodes, or you know. But yeah, that's all I got on this one, and we'll put the next one up shortly.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, in the description we'll have which episode we're going to watch next once we decide, because we need to. You want to do the first appearance of Kevin Nash on or
Maybe.
WCW? What's up?
Yeah, maybe,
Maybe.
maybe.
Okay. Yeah. Well, once
It
you
was
figure it out, it'll be in that
toss a
description.
coin.
If not, it'll be in the comments. But yeah, let us know if you want us to talk about key moments in WCW, WWE, or other wrestling programs. Because I would say that we don't really have any expertise when it comes to TNA or AEW. So if it's something you want from those programs, then let us know. But yeah, that's pretty much it. You know, that's
All right.
that's all we got to say. Have a good one, guys. Take care.